So last week we touched upon the first noble truth on the dukkha, uh, and I give an more like a overall understanding on the dukkha. So tonight we will look into the more of how we can able to approach the dukkha, especially when we are in the time of meditation. So tonight mostly the talk will be on the mental stress, mental suffering. But before we go into that, I would like to touch upon a bit on the bodily suffering first. Because I've touched upon the bodily suffering in some of the talks, about maybe a month or two ago, I touched upon that, on the bodily suffering and how we can able to, not to overcome it, how we can able to see them as they really are. Now, just to give a short summary on this bodily suffering. And here, when we look at bodily suffering here, we are not talking about all those illness that you have a long-term problem. Yeah? That one, it's, well, we need doctors. You don't need me. But when you need to understand or to pay attention to the bodily suffering or to the bodily pain, especially the bodily stress, pain, uncomfortableness, itchiness, and so on, then there are also a few things that we have to keep in mind when we are meditating. One of the most common mistake that when a yogi approach bodily pain, for example, like itchiness or a certain kind of strong pain in the knees or in the buttock area, as you sit there for half an hour, 45 minutes, then those type of pain developed. Now, this pain, first of all, we must keep in the mind that we are not to get rid of it. We are not to get rid of it. We have to see them as they are for the time period when they arises until you end your sitting. Until you end your sitting for maybe for another half an hour or so, for example. So during this time when it arises, a lot of times yogi tend to get rid of it. They get rid of it with a few ways, So one of the ways that they try to get rid of it is that they try to shift the position. Where sometimes very tiny little movement of shifting, then the pain is already gone. In the back of the mind, they do not want to see these things. Another type of person, another type of yogi also wants to get rid of this pain is the type of the front. The front is like a noting. But behind the intention is to note it so that you can get rid of the pain. That is also not. So the first one and the second one is different because the first one is already perhaps the anger is there or the aversion is there, already don't want to see it. But the second one is a bit more cunning. I mean, a bit more subtle in a sense, and not cunning. It's a bit more subtle in the sense that in the front there, you try to note the pain. You note this pain, pulling. But the behind the mind is that you want the pain to go away. So when you want the pain to go away, you are not fully 100% to pay attention, to see things as they are. Although you try to see it, but you're not doing 100% because the motivation is to get rid of it. So a lot of times yogi tend to do those things. This one also we will talk about it when we come into the different type of craving, because it also have different form of craving arises when you are connected with this type of pain also. So here the nature of this pain on the bodily part is that we try to see them as they are, meaning that in order for us to see them, we must pay attention to them whenever they arises. not to get rid of it, not to try to push it away. To see them as they are means that you have to pay attention to its characteristic, meaning that when it's getting more, it's getting less, or or a certain type of pain, hard pain, soft pain, warm pain, pulling pain, burning pain. You got to see it's different types of pain, and you got to put your mind there. A natural, of course, in the beginning part of the meditation, it's not easy to put the mind there. You put the mind there within 15 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds. You can't even last a minute just putting on the mind on the pain. It's not easy. So your mind needs to be trained up. Your mind needs to be trained up. And one of the factor that needs to be trained up is this mindfulness together with the effort. These two factor, when you come with these two factor, then the mind can able to sustain onto the pain. And again, these two factors arises is because of your walking meditation and your daily activities. That is crucial. So a lot of times when a yogi don't pay attention to their walking meditation that much, then their pain tolerance, their resilience towards the pain, it's very, very thin. So you need a lot of effort and a lot of courage to see them as they are. But this bodily pain, especially in the meditation, like on Friday, it was mentioned that how do you differentiate between a bodily pain and meditation pain, and also when it's a physical sickness. As I said, that the meditation pain is you meditate while you're sitting, you have the pain. When you get up, the pain is gone. Then you feel relief and so on. Then okay, no problem. Now we go to the mental suffering. Mental suffering is much worse compared to the bodily suffering. Bodily suffering, you get up, is more or less gone. Mental suffering, sometimes for some yogis, it lingers on. And that also we need to look into it more carefully. It's the same principle as the dukkha, as I mentioned in the 2 or 3 talks ago, I mentioned that dukkha is to be fully understood. That means the dukkha has to see them as they really are. So too when it comes into the mental suffering. Now when you say this mental suffering, let me qualify myself. Here the mental suffering here, we acknowledge that of course when we talk about mental suffering, you come with depression or anxiety and hallucinations, schizophrenia, and all those things. This is not I'm trying to cover. Although these are mental suffering, but this is not my area. This is the area for psychiatrists, psychologists, and so on. This is not my area. So sometimes in the retreat time, there are yogis, not to say often, but once in the blue moon, and this type of yogi come in, or sometimes some yogis want to recommend another yogi to come in for a retreat, and that the other yogi, it's mentally unhealthy, So I do not accept them, and not only usually, most of the time I do not accept them. This is not my area, and also it's good that this is not the area for the monks also. Sometimes there are devotees that we think that we monks are everything also can do. We are not in that area. And sometimes there are monks also trying to help with this type of people with these mental problems. I find that sometimes although with your good intention, the intention is very good, but sometimes it may create even more problems for that particular person or particular person with a mental sickness. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful. So this is not my area. So don't bring those things that I cannot able to do it. And in order for me to help them, this is not my area. Perhaps sometimes these type of people do come in also, but more like we give them a word of to soften a soft advice to calm the mind down. Sometimes even they see the monks there, whoever they are, even wearing the robes. With this type of people, even when they see, they also feel good. So even without we are able to open up our mouth. So sometimes they will let them come, but just to let them see, but not in the area of meditation. Not in the area of meditation. So we keep that one aside. So we look into the area of that mental suffering that we can able to handle. Now, this type of mental suffering that you can handle is those type of mental suffering arises for a while, for a short while, and after that it kind of like sort of fade away. But when it arises, that time is really suffering. Yeah? But it doesn't create or it doesn't give rise into a mental unhealthiness or a long-term mental unhealthiness. It kind of like a sporadic time. Certain time it arises, then it disappears. That one we can we with the vipassana we can able to manage them so that they don't come in that often, because when they come in they becomes a big hindrance to the bhavana, to the mental development. So we need to look into that area, because this area, although it comes up just for a short while, but it can become a very um, it can come with like fear or anger, or sometimes with a lot of lust. Sometimes it can come in with regret, worry, or restless mind. Then it sort of like boiling inside there. It's going boiling inside there. And while you're meditating, it's very difficult for you to. It feels very difficult to overcome. So these type of things we want to look into it. So so how do we able to do it? How to overcome them, especially when we are in the meditation, because these things once in a while it springs up in the meditation. What more, sometimes also in our everyday life it also springs up. But when we learn how to manage them in the meditation, a lot of to do with how we change our mind inside there, and then therefore when it comes into our everyday life, it is much more much less uh, um, not so potent anymore, not so strong anymore, because we change a lot in the meditation. So how can we do that? Huh? All right, let's go into the sitting itself. Now, while you are sitting during in the sitting meditation, when you are going through, let's say, sometimes rising, falling, or you are doing in breath, out breath, and then certain time your memory of the past becomes very clear, to you. One thing, our memory becomes clear to us is because of our mindfulness. Because another word for mindfulness, another term for mindfulness, it's remembering, remembering or recollecting in that sense. But in the sense of vipassana, the mindfulness is in the sense of presentness. But anyway, those things, although this mindfulness, although they are terms, different terms, but when you act in the mind, when you act in the mind, when it's function in the mind, that memory also become clear to you. Because many times we seen the yogis, when they say to mention about their, sometimes they meditate, then they can remember the very past that they have not seen it they have not able to remember those things for a long period of time. But when they're in the meditation, these types of memories springs up, and it becomes clear to you. It is clear, and also sometimes you can able to see very vivid the images that is going through in front of you. You can see that, well, if it's a happy thoughts, then it's everything going through. Or if it's a terrible thoughts, then it also is playing in front of you. Now, this is where this, if it's on the negative side, that means if those memory connected with a lot of like sadness, for example, sadness could be long ago somebody died or your parents died, and then when you are sitting down, the sadness is consuming the whole nature of the whole psyche and also the body also. And then after that, the lamentation or the tears is coming out. Yeah. So every now and then, we find these yogis are going through. Yeah. If they cry and they cry not enough, then usually they'll come into the to the interview room and they'll keep on crying. Continue their lamentation. Yeah. Anyway, now these type of things, it for some yogis, these are big hindrance to them. Very big hindrance to them. So what can we do with it? What can we do with it? There are ways of vipassana, and also there are ways of samatha, and also there are ways of prevention or reflection, that which is they are not in vipassana and they are not in samatha, but more like an everyday life reflections and so on. So we're going to look into that. We're going to look into a vipassana area, and also samatha, and also the other one also, because I think that all these things is very helpful to reduce that dukkha. Because in the mind one is different from the body here. The mind one, because there are defilements involved. The body one, if it's pain, it comes because of the elements is not in a state of balance, and then unpleasant feeling arises. That is not caused by defilements. Whereas the mental dukkha one, it caused by defilements. So we have to overcome that. We have to overcome that defilements. With that defilements overcome, then also we overcome, at least temporarily, on the mental dukkha. Now say this time you sit down there and the sadness, kind of like a sad story all arises in the mind. Every time you see these images, you kind of like, you are already into the whole scenario already. You are into the history, at least like the whole history is being playing through. And every time it goes through, the sadness becomes very strong. Tears comes out. That time you're not able to meditate. But nevertheless, the way of vipassana is that you have to make an effort. You have to make an effort to sort of like push yourself out from that story, out from that the whole scenario, the whole scene that is going through inside there. It takes a lot of courage now. It's not so easy as just talking about it now, because this one is really part of your whole I, The whole I am is locked inside there. And for you to able to pull it out, you need a lot of mindfulness. Again, you need a lot of effort also. So again, this effort, if you build up from your walking meditation, then it's also very helpful. Then it's helpful, and especially when the time when it comes with that type of sadness arises, then this time you have to pull yourself out from it. And then you got to keep on noting sadness, 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 or memory, 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 or tears, 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 tears. You have to see them as they are, as it's happening right in the present moment. You got to see them. But initially, it's difficult for new yogis to do it because although you try, which is very good, but then it will pull you into it again. You will pull you into it again, then you cry, cry, cry again. Then after that, you have to make an effort to pull it out. So you got to kind of like to and fro. You've got to go to and fro, to and fro. It may take you not just one sitting. It may take you a number of sittings or a number of walkings for you to able to be much more able to resilient on this type of sadness when it comes up. So you got to see them. When a yogi become a little bit more advanced in noting this sadness, then the mind able to note it for a longer period of time without falling into the sadness. Meaning here also is that although the memory is still going through, you see still the very clear memory of the past. But now the sadness begin to lessen. Still the same memory, but it begin to lessen. This time the mindfulness is slowly taking over. So you may not, you still feel some sadness, but this time maybe the tears does not come up anymore. You still see it. That means there's some good progress right now. Just for you to change from sadness with all the tears and now sadness without the tears. It's still there, still a bit consuming you, but the mindfulness is a bit kicking in right now, which is wonderful. So nevertheless, in other times also, this type of sadness every now and then it will spring up again. You go for a 2 weeks retreat, somewhere 3 weeks retreat, somewhere 1 month retreat. This type of certain sadness, it will spring up every now and then. But every now and then, when it becomes obvious to you, when you pay attention to it, again, in the more developed part of it, is that you can still able to see the memory very clear to you. All these things is happening to you. But this time, the relationship, the mental relationship towards the memory becomes a clarity, mindfulness, and is not affected by that memory. That means this time the sadness is not there. Memory is there. Memory you cannot change. Memory is part of the whole nature of this perception, sanya, that you cannot change them. You cannot change them. But you can change somewhat the present defilements that arises that's connected to that past memory. So therefore, when you pay attention to it, when you get more advanced in noting this type of sadness, then this type of sadness become very weak or totally not there at all. And then you can able to notice the whole story going through without you falling into that the whole scenario inside there. So if you can able to do that, that is wonderful. But at times when you are not mindful again, when your mindfulness is weak again, then this defilement, this sadness will kind of like overwhelm you. Again, it may overwhelm you. It will overwhelm that you become sad again. But this time, although it overwhelmed you, this time the sadness is not as long as before. It's not long in the sense that length of time. Those time, perhaps you get sad for a long period. But this time, the sadness, it comes in a shorter period. Then after that, you overcome it already. But when you're mindful, when your mindfulness is strong, it becomes very, very short. Then it becomes very short, or it doesn't arise at all. But when you come out from your retreat, let's say, you come out from your retreat, and you come out from the retreat, then sometimes this memory arises again. Now, this memory arises again, then this time, because you have seen its characteristics, then the time that sadness also may not be very strong as like before. Then it may be very shortened. The time is shortened, not powerful. You go through it for a while. After that, your mind is settled already. Your mind is settled. You still have the memory, but your mind is already settled. And then the sadness is not much there. For some people, even in their not in their practice that time, when they are out there, when we are in their everyday life, then with this type of memory, then also that sadness also does not come in anymore. For that to happen, of course, the mindfulness must be strong, the effort must be strong, the clarity of the mind must be strong. And it is really important for some people, for some yogis, because for some people we have this skeleton in the closet, all these secrets in us, that this terrible thing that we have, then it becomes very mentally very suffering inside there. I've seen number of people who are consumed by death, not consumed by death of another loved ones, and then they are inside there. They are all burning inside there due to that sadness, and they burn until like sometimes we do not know how to advise them. Sometimes in my mind also, if you have really have Dhamma, a proper Dhamma, and then these things will not affect you so much. But sometimes when they come into that stage, it's very difficult for us to advise them any Dhamma to them, because the mind is not able to accept anything. So while you are not falling into this type of state of mind, so it's better for us to meditate as much as we can. So because mindfulness arises, then we can able to handle this type of situation. It may not be zero, because we are still in samsara, but it may become less, at least less suffering in our life, mental suffering in our life. We deal with this bodily suffering already. It's already very, very difficult already as we go into old age. Then we have all these different type of sickness already arises from the body. But when the mind is sick, it's difficult. So it's good that we have some degree of mindfulness there. So here, the way of dealing with sadness, or which is one of the cause of mental suffering, then if you can overcome the sadness, then it'll be very good for you. It's the same thing also when we deal with like fear. Because sometimes there are people who are so much fear, even though they are already meditating. Ask them to stay at home alone, also cannot. Ask them to meditate alone, also cannot. Sometimes we want to give them a room, a single room to stay, especially the ladies. Say, Bante, cannot lah. I need a partner. I need a roommate. I dare not stay in a room alone. Don't know, at night got this sound, that sound. Stay alone also they have fear. Stay with other people also they fear. Or stay with others also sometimes they get angry with other yogis. So sometimes, yogis, when they come into a meditation centers, you see, sometimes things may not be so ideal. Sometimes you have to stay in a place alone. For ladies, of course, this can be quite dangerous. But for men also, a lot of them also do not dare to stay. Even for monks also, staying alone in the forest, dare not stay. If I stay alone in the forest, I'd be so happy right now. Away from everybody else. Now the fear arises these fear are very real. Although the external things may not be real at all. The mind can exaggerate the whole scenario right now. A little bit of sound arises. They fear that this may be big animals or wild animals, or there may be other people, and so on. Sometimes even in the retreat centers, even they got so many other yogis also around. Then there are some yogis also, there are some sound also at night. They also get fear. When you have fear, for some people, the whole body shake. Shake. And that is a very strong fear, a very strong fear. And then that means the mind is somewhat very weak right now. Even sometimes they are in the retreat center, they are supposed to be meditating, but nevertheless, mentally very weak. Now, this type of things, this type of fear and so on, especially again when it comes up in the sitting, for example. Here, when it become predominant, it become clear. Just like sadness, you have to turn your mind towards it. You got to note it, fear, 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 and you got to see it as it is. You got to see them as they are. You got to see it clearly. Let's say you move forward a little bit, and let's say you can able to overcome this fear, and you are quite good at it. Let's say, when you are good at it, we turn this fear into a meditation object also, or the sadness into a meditation object. In the sense that when you see the sadness and you see the fear, you can able to see how it grow. You see how it grow, how it becomes consuming, enveloping the whole mind, gripping the mind, and you won't let go. And you kind of like sit there as if you're out of that fear and you're watching the fear, or you're watching the sadness. You see how it grows, how it burns inside you, how it consumes inside you, how it grows and how it contracts, and how whatever that is doing. If you see them, then you begin to see the true nature of the fear or the sadness. And it's interesting, when you see those state of mind. If you see this state of mind, and then after that, slowly it diminish, and then it becomes less and less and less, and then sometimes you see how it disappear, and there will be times and how it kind of like increasing, coming up again, and it burns you again. Then after that, it go. So sometimes within a sitting, you can actually see those things, which makes the meditation become very interesting. Although you see the fear, although you see the sadness, but you come out from the meditation, you feel good because you can actually see and actually able to notice and actually able to overcome those defilements, which is wonderful. If you can able to do that, you see the nature of the fear arises, you see the sadness arises, then those type of meditation, if it falls under the Chittanupassana, Satipatthana. Because you see the changes is happening, you see its characteristics, you see how it disappears, you see how it arises again, something like that. It falls under Chittanupassana. Yeah. But when it comes into Dhammanupassana, when it comes into Dhammanupassana, connected to this fear and connected to this sadness, then you see them how this fear or how this sadness or how these defilements are related, are connected or related, or how you see the cause and effect, how they cause for another thoughts to arise, how they cause lamentation or tears arises, or how you see before that, before this fear arises, what happens before, then how these things that happened before connected to this fear, connected to this anger, or connected to this sadness. When you see the connection, then it comes in as a Dhammanupassana. For example, say for example, while you are meditating, then the fear arises. You not fear. Then after that, you notice that the fear arises is because the sound that arises. Because the sound arises, the thoughts arises, the different types of thoughts arises, then fear springs up. So when you see this type of hearing, thinking, or fear, then if you see this type this way, then it falls under Dhammanupassana, because you see the interrelationship, which is the subject here is the fear, then how the whole thing is connected to it. So you take note of that. Sometimes it shows you in this way. Sometimes it shows you another way. Sometimes it shows you, like, for example, you notice the fear or you notice the sadness. Then if you notice the sadness, then after that, you notice the sadness arises, is getting stronger. Then after that, the bodily aspect arises. That means the tears come out from it. So you sit there, you see your nature of your sadness. Then after that, tears comes out. Tears come out. Sadness, tears, sadness, tears, sadness, tears. And yet, the noting mind is not affected of it by it, by them, in that sense, in the sense that you can see a relationship is happening there. As if like it's not, I am the one who's crying, I am not the one who is in fear right now. It's just fear, and it's just sad. It is just tears that comes out. Sometimes not just dealing with the tears, but also with another different types of thoughts also springs up. So you see relationship from the sadness, it goes into the tears. Tears goes into another form of thinking. Then you see this one, interrelationship. Or sometimes when you get better, then you see a whole range of it. You see that the sound arises, you see some sound arises, springs up different types of thoughts, wrong type of thoughts, springs up fear arises, springs up another type of thoughts arises, and then after that, whatever that's coming up. So sometimes you see the whole range of it. Sometimes you see part of it. Sometimes you see the beginning part of it, or sometimes you see the ending part of it. So it becomes very interesting. Yeah, even together with whether it's unwholesome states of mind arises, if you can know how to turn it into a meditation object, then it becomes, it helps you. In fact, right now, it takes up, the mindfulness also starts to developing even with the defilements, because you see them as they are. You see them not as what you think is yours, not what you think is mine, in the sense of my fear, in the sense of my fear or my anger or my sadness or my mother or my father. They are just memories. They are just visions only. They are just sadness only. They are just thoughts only. They are just fears only. Yeah. So it takes a lot of effort for us to change our perception from there, from the sadness, to bring the mind out from it so that we can able to free ourselves at least temporarily from that sadness. Then with that we can continue on with the practice. So this part is important because a lot of times this part now, it's a lot of entanglement for a lot of yogis, especially the beginner yogis. A lot of entanglement inside there. So hopefully you kind of like understand what I'm talking about. Yeah? Hard to do, but it's manageable. Yeah? Then what else can we do besides dukkha, besides this vipassana way of looking at dukkha? Now, if we are looking into another way of overcoming them, then of course it's also a samatha way of doing it. But when you are doing samatha way, they are not falls under vipassana, they don't fall under Four Noble Truth. They kind of, I mean, you don't see them directly here. What I mean, you don't see the dukkha directly. You are using samatha. You are using another wholesome mental state to overcome the unwholesome state, but you are not seeing directly like a vipassana meditation would do. Yeah? Samatha meditation is more like you cultivate a certain state of mind in order to overcome, in order to prevent them from arising or to overcome them. So again here, like for example, metta. When we develop a certain amount quality of metta, I mean, you don't wait until you are angry then you want to do some metta. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you are in the everyday life, since you're not able to go anywhere nowadays, you're living in a house sometimes with your siblings, with other people, children, and all of them locked inside the house. Well, I'm over here. Sometimes I look at many of the devotees, or a lot of people compared to me and they all. It's very different. Yeah. Here I got the whole house on my own. I want to run up and down, also no problem. Yeah. Y'all cannot. Anyway, but the thing is that here, when you develop metta, you develop the metta not when you are angry. So you develop it in your everyday life. As I said that, some days ago, some talks ago, I think I mentioned that you cannot be doing daily mindfulness in all the time, can you? You are at home. It's not easy for you to do that. We understand that. Also, it's not easy for me to able to do this unless I'm in the retreat. So we can cultivate other mental factors, and cultivating these samatha factors are very good. Cultivating the metta or the Brahma Viharas here it reduces a lot of your mental problems. Anger, your jealousy, even sadness also, even your restless mind, because indirectly, your cruelty and so on. And it softens the mind. When the mind is softened, then defilements doesn't arise that much. So sometimes you just only need about a few seconds, 30 seconds while you're washing your plates. You don't have to be mindful of washing here. It's perfectly all right. Then here, washing, may all around me be free from harm and danger. May I be free from harm and danger. May I be free. May I be well. May I be happy. Depending on whichever words that you want to use, the most important thing is that it can able to bring that quality of metta, and sort of like mentally, emotionally, you can touch on them. You can caress them mentally with your metta. May all beings here, as if like your mind can able to touch all beings around here, to be free from harm and danger. Then you kind of like touch on them, and then you do it repeatedly again and again throughout the day become very, very helpful. Uh, or you want to cultivate some mudita. And then again here, when you cultivate mudita here, then may, may, may all beings here, um, whatever achievement or accomplishment uh, they have, may their accomplishment able to develop, may I be happy for all of them, for all their accomplishments. May I able to rejoice for all their success. Kind of like you open up your mind, you soften the mind. So with this type of mind, if you do it regularly, every day, again and again when we do it, it is wonderful when it comes to your retreat time. You see that when it comes to your meditation time, it really reduces a lot of your mental suffering. This type of restless mind, of fear, and so on. Because the mind is softer. And also in your everyday life, also it becomes so much more better. If I got time, perhaps we're going to dwell into a bit of developing the metta itself or developing the Brahma Vihara. You know? And we're going to, and there are ways how we can able to develop them. I know that too, but we don't have time for these talks. Another day, another day maybe. So again, here samatha meditation, if you can able to meditate on it or you can able to cultivate in everyday life, it is wonderful. It reduces a lot of your these mental problems, mental hindrances and so on. It's wonderful if you can able to cultivate them. Now the prevention is another area that we can able to cultivate. Prevention in the sense that when you are facing, let's say, somebody died, your loved one died. If when you're facing your loved one died, and then here is a good time that we reflect. We reflect of their kindness, or we reflect on their goodness. We reflect on their um, with gratitude and so on. Then it will be very, very helpful in lowering down our mental defilements, because when we able to cultivate these things, it's not just only for that particular death only, because in the future also, because you have cultivated them, then in the future you kind of like the mind knows how to apply it onto them automatically. And when you apply onto them automatically, the sadness become minimal or become very less. In that sense, it doesn't affect you so much. So daily also we have to reflect about death. We reflect about the impermanence. We take care of our sila and so on. We become contented, kindness, gratitude. Now those type of things are which I find it that sometimes in the Zoom in the Sunday school. Sunday Dhamma talk sometimes I come in also, of course without my name here I come in, I listen to them. Hey, quite interesting, They talk about gratitude, kindness, this and that. And this is important because this to remind us again and again that while we are every day, when we cultivate those things, it helps us to prevent our defilements from coming in so much. So if you don't cultivate them, those defilements find its way of creeping into our lives. That would be good, if you reflect on it, meditate on these things, that'll be wonderful. Another part of all right to talk about it also is that, especially when we comes into vipassana again, this time the mental stress that arises, the stress that arises, it may not be necessarily connected with worldly defilements, or connected with, I mean, it's still connected with some subtle defilements, but it's not connected to all these worldly type of things, Because sometimes when you go into a deeper aspect of meditation, there are certain suffering, mental suffering arises. It's because that you think that you're not progressing well. Bante, how come I meditate so long already? Neither here nor there one, Bante. Where am I already? Can you please tell me which insight already I'm in, That also is a kind of like a mental dukkha, We understand that now, We understand that because they want to achieve this enlightenment before they die. Some yogis, they think that Bante bia lah, Bante. This life bo calling. I think too old already. I cannot already. I didn't in young time. Didn't do anything lah. Play and play and play lah. Until all the time only we see the Dhamma. Then only want to meditate. Now also cannot already. Maybe wait for next life already. Anyway, the thing is sometimes when it comes to this progress and you think that you are not progressing well, then also it creates a lot of mental restlessness, and this type of restlessness also is a kind of mental suffering also. And also it's mentioned in the sutta, not only just nowadays that we have. So in the 2,500 years recorded in the suttas also, there are certain yogis, certain bhikkhus also, when they cultivate, then they cannot able to progress, or they cannot achieve what they want to achieve, then mental stress also comes in. So this type of suffering does not connected with the worldliness. It connected with the practice, which is in a way that you need teachers to calm them down, and then once they calm them down, then they can able to practice further. You see, this suffering, this dukkha aspect, especially this dukkha partner, they are, in a way, they are all, I mean, if you look at them, they are perception, they are sanya, dukkha sanya. As I said earlier on in the summer, 1 or 2 talks ago, I think 2 talks ago, as I said that the whole purpose that we cultivate this vipassana meditation is to change our wrong perception into right perception. And to change this from wrong perception into right perception, we use the mindfulness, we use the effort, we use the so on, those mental qualities. And also we use objects also. That means the elements, the 4 elements, the mental states, the 5 aggregates, those things, in order for us to change this perception. Because if we don't change this perception, then the wrong perception that we have, then it will springs up into a wrong citta springs up into a wrong view. So if you have a right perception, when it changes into a right perception, then it springs up into right thoughts, and the right thoughts, and it springs it to right view. So in the vipassana, the changing of the perception goes so much more deeper than what we read from the books or listen into the Dhamma talks. We need to change this internal, very deep, wrong perception in us in order for the defilements to be eradicated. In order for the defilements to be eradicated. Now, in order for us to see the perception of dukkha, the deep perception of dukkha, we need to see anicca first. We need to see anicca. As I said 2 talks ago, I mentioned those things of you are sitting down and then you feel pain and here, pain there, everywhere, pain here. You think you see all the dukkha already. I say it's not yet. You only see partial of the dukkha only. No matter how painful you're going through, you only see partial part of the dukkha. Another part of the dukkha is that you see impermanence. You see impermanence, incessant impermanence. Then it springs out the dukkha, a deeper aspect of the dukkha. And that dukkha is not painful, but very unsatisfactory. There'll be times, for example, just to give you a few examples here and there, that when you go into the deeper aspect of mindfulness or this deeper aspect of vipassana, especially when you come into the area of dukkha, there are several ways of how you look at dukkha, how it is going to how the dukkha is going to show to the yogis. Now, one of the ways that is how it's going to show to the yogis is they call it the knowledge of fear. The knowledge of fear, if I get it right, if I think so, if the word. That is one of the insight that a yogi have to go through, in the sense that during this time, a yogi go through, it sees that even with the in-breath, out-breath that he pays attention to, or the rising, falling, or any object that pays attention to, he may see that things are changing. Things are rising, passing away, changing, and so on. But the more it change, the more unsatisfactory it becomes. The more very sian, you get very, very difficult. Previously, while you are taking in breath, out breath, you feel so nice. Once you get able to notice the rising and falling, you feel good. You can notice your sensation, you feel good. You don't feel any stress, anything. All you need to do is just pay attention to them. So at that time, you haven't seen the nature of the dukkha that arises from these objects. But in the later development, the dukkha that arises with this object, you see it changing. And when you see it changing, you feel so stressful. Sometimes for some yogis is that, for example, there are people who mention that their stomach is like, like when you rinse your laundry, hands, you use a hand wash, and then your towel, for example, and then you want to squeeze the water out, you turn and turn and turn, Here is that the stomach also something like that. It's like a turn and turn and turn. You can note nothing already. You note some more, you turn some more, as if like you're gonna squeeze every of your intestine, everything inside there. And then while you sit there, you feel so painful. For some yogis, not every yogi may notice it, but these are difficult. And then the moment they stop the whole meditation, everything goes back to normal. Everything just go back to just in breath, out breath, rising, falling, everything, and you don't see it at all. And then after that, the moment you pulls the concentration in, you pulls the mindfulness in, and then you put your whole attention there, then it shows you again all the changes, and then it shows you all the difficulty. And it keep on changing and changing. For some yogis, you notice that that as if like there's no place for you to hang on. Like in the past, in your meditation, you notice the in-breath, out-breath, very, very wonderful. You hang on to it. Rising, falling, you feel very wonderful. You hang on to it. You feel that your other sensation, you just hang on to it. You feel good, and you're just there. But in the deeper level, that some yogis experience this, that they see all this changing, and then as if like there's nothing for them to hold on anymore, because things are keep on changing, as if they keep on falling. They keep on falling, or there's no platform for you to stand on, as if your mind is keep on dropping and dropping, but you're still nothing actually. It just feel unpleasant, very unsatisfactory. That is also another aspect of dukkha. It's also another aspect of dukkha, but it does not come as pain here, pain there. It comes as more like impermanence, oppressing in a sense, kind of like oppressing impermanence in a sense. So as you develop, you see a different aspect of dukkha, how the dukkha arises in us. And then if you go into further deeper, then you show you more different types of dukkha. So dukkha is kind of like it's a very, I mean, interesting topic to look into. You know, unless some people think that, you know, we all just talk about dukkha, dukkha, nothing but dukkha. In reality, it's true. Nothing is this one. Everything is dukkha only. Actually, finally, but people don't want to hear that. Anyway, this is some of the things we talk about the different aspect of dukkha, how we can able to overcome certain mental dukkha, you know, and hopefully those things can be very helpful to you. And then in the times to come, hopefully we can overcome this type of mental dukkha, and it does not become a hindrance to our practice. Then hopefully our practice become more smoother. All right. So we stop here for tonight. Okay.